Right now, I'm challenging myself to see if I can make 128 Regulation H teams that are each different from one another over the course of 128 days. Why 128, you might ask? At the end of the 128 days, we're going to do something special where we battle every team against each other in a single elimination bracket to see which team emerges on top. There will be some competitively strong teams, there will be some gimmick teams, and there will be some probably a good number of goofs and gaffs in there, so if you want to follow through to the end, subscribe so that you can keep up with each day. But without further ado, let's move on to day 17. Alright everybody, welcome back to another video, and in today's video, we are going to be going over a Slaking team. This is another one of those teams that has to pop up eventually somewhere on the timeline, so we're doing it now. I do think Slaking has a little bit more merit in Regulation H than it did in any of the previous formats, but let's get into it here. Starting off with the actual Slaking that we are running, we are doing a Double Edge, Facade, Drain Punch, and Knockoff Slaking because that gives us coverage into mostly everything in the format right now. Again, there's always Terrestrialization, which can make your use of a choice band a little iffy, but I think that choice band is very important for some specific KOs that you might see in some of the games coming up. But the main downside to using Slaking, despite its amazing stats that it has, mostly its HP and attack stat are very high, but it has the truant ability, which means that it can only attack every other turn. So the rest of this team is designed to either make use of the Slaking only getting to move for one turn, or turning off Slaking's ability. And usually when you see these types of teams, they are Terra Ghost on Slaking to avoid things such as Fake Out. However, I'm using the Terra Normal just so we can get as much good raw normal type damage into our opponents as we can with our choice band. Next up we have Grafai, who is theoretically Slaking's best partner, including Wheezing, because Grafai has the move Doodle, which means that it can change its and its allies' ability into the target's ability, which is very useful in this format because, kind of like I talked about in the last video, there are a lot of paradoxes and you can't copy paradox abilities. So Doodle is a lot more usable, and with our Prankster ability, we're always going to be getting off the Doodle first. It's just that if whatever we Doodle is not a Prankster, then we're going to lose our Prankster ability. But we also have some useful tools in the Encore and the Helping Hand, which can help Slaking pick up a lot of KOs, and we also have the Taunt to disrupt against other Pokemon that are trying to status us. We have the Covert Cloak to avoid Fakeouts, and we have the Terra Dark to avoid being Prankster taunted. Next up, we have Wheezing, the main way in the format that you turn off abilities because of Wheezing's own ability, which is Neutralizing Gas, which when Wheezing is on the field, will completely turn off all abilities happening, except for specific ones like Zero to Hero with Palafin because it goes off the field technically, so its ability still activates. But our Wheezing is mostly bulky, but we do have the one offensive option in Gunk Shot, which will give me an absolute headache whenever it misses. But we also have good physical protection in the Will-O-Wisp, and we have the Taunt to negate any status moves that the opponent wants to go for. And Protect is very important because we want to keep Wheezing on the field for as long as we can whenever we only have Slaking left to do our damage, because if Slaking's ability turns back on and our opponent has a single Pokemon with Protect, we lose the game. We're going to be running the item Citrus Berry in order to give Wheezing a lot of survivability, and we're going to be using Terra Grass so that we can avoid Amoonguss Spore. The next thing we're slapping on this team is just a classic Dozo. This is a pretty common physical Dozo in the format, where we have the Wave Crash, we have the Earthquake, we have Order Up, and with our Tatsugiri form, we are going to get an attack boost every time we go for the Order Up, and we have Protect just in case we need to stall like a Fake Out turn or something, and with the Terra Steel Terra type, we can avoid Clear Smogs coming out from Pokemon like Amoonguss. And we are unaware, so we have the ability to be intimidated, but we are Clear Amulet, so as long as our Clear Amulet is holding on, we will not have any stat drops happen against Dondozo, except for Haze, because Haze isn't technically a stat drop, it's just a stat erasure. But to complement our Dondozo, we have the Tatsugiri, and this is just another basic Tatsugiri set, nothing real special here. We have the Muddy Water, which is your go-to move on Tatsugiri for your stab water damage, and we have the Draco Meteor to play a little bit riskier just in case we need that one damage boost, but we also have the Icy Wind for the speed control, and we have the Taunt for... I put a lot of taunts on this team. And lastly, we have the Scrafty, and I chose Scrafty because it has the ability Intimidate, which will help us out whenever we need to lower the physical attack of a Pokemon, such as Annihilate or King Gambit, because we have the Ability Shield, which means that our ability cannot be changed, which includes Wheezing. So what we can do is we can lead Weezing and Scrafty, and Scrafty will be able to intimidate the Pokemon that are across from us. However, their abilities that would counter the Intimidate, like Defiant, will not activate because Weezing is on the field. And also Scrafty has some good tools for supporting the Dondozo, such as the Fake Out if we want to attack with Dondozo for one turn, or knock off an opposing Pokemon's item, or we could side coaching into pretty much anything on this team other than Grafaiai and have a good time, because coaching will give an attack boost to Slaking. Weezing has Gunk Shot, as we previously saw, and especially Dondozo, who cannot have its stats removed because of its Clear Amulet. So yeah, that's a basic gist of the team. Let's get into some battles. So here we're starting off with an actually pretty interesting mirror, as they also have a Slaking and the Weezing, but all the rest of our mons are pretty different. All of today's battles are closed team sheet battles, however I am theorizing that they were Ability Shield Arcanine so that they can get the Intimidate, but I think the fact that we have Dondozo here helps us out a little bit more. So let's start the game, and we see that they lead Whimsicott and Slaking, and I lead Slaking and Scrafty. I think that both of us were kind of assuming that we would bring Weezing to this game, so I didn't bring Weezing to this game. Scrafty gets the Intimidate down, which is good, and they rip their Terra Ghost immediately. Whimsicott gets flinched. We're kind of taking a risk that it's not Covert Cloak here, but we get the Double Edge into Whimsicott, and that takes it out, so the opponent at least isn't going to be able to go for Tailwind, as the opposing Slaking goes for Double Edge, but Scrafty takes it because we intimidated it. As Gholdengo comes in, and Gholdengo is a little threatening, but not so threatening for Dondozo, as they bring in Weezing. And because of the turn order here, because Slaking was so fast, we actually don't get to make Dondozo Tatsugiri here, because Weezing's ability activates, and Tatsugiri gets a special defense shot from the Gholdengo. But I figure that they want to keep Weezing alive, since they only have Slaking in the back, so I double into the Gholdengo this turn at the expense of Tatsugiri, but we probably weren't getting off Tatsugiri anyways, as Ghost Slaking comes in, and Scrafty gets to come in and intimidate both, which is really nice, since we're Ability Shield, so their Weezing doesn't negate our Intimidate ability. And they do Double Edge to finish off Scrafty, but Dondozo is able to get some good damage into Weezing. Weezing eats its Citrus Berry, so we're pretty alike in a lot of ways, actually. Dondozo's going to protect, since I assume that they would want to attack, but my Slaking is faster than their Slaking, and we get to knock off, and if you see, we knock off their Choice Bands, so our Slakings were exactly the same too, except my Slaking, which just had more speed investment than their Slaking, I guess, or we won the speed tie. Either or is possible. They try to Will-O-Wisp into Dozo, but that doesn't connect, and the opponent understands that the game is kind of over with Slaking and Dondozo on the field. Here we have a bit of an Armor Rouge and DD Torkoal Trick Room setup, but they also have Palafin, which can make this a little tricky because Palafin can haze. But we start off the game, and I decided to lead Scrafty and Dondozo to give me each matchup, or we could just coaching Dondozo, as Incineroar comes in and tries to Intimidate, and it does get the Intimidate on Scrafty, but not on Dondozo because of our Clear Amulet. I decided to protect Dondozo and get the coaching, and they Fake Out into Scrafty and Salt Cure with Garganacl, so they were perfectly okay with me swapping in Tatsugiri there and just wave crashing either Pokemon, I guess, for whatever reason. But I decided to do the coaching again, seeing as they might predict it, but they knock off, and we do wave crash into Garganacl, but it's not enough damage to take it out with the only +1 boost, and they do get the Salt Cure, which is going to be chipping off a pretty noticeable chunk of our health. I bring in Tatsugiri just to get that little bit of a boost that we have left with Dondozo, and Dondozo Earthquakes into both, which is able to clear the field, which is at least nice, as Dondozo takes the Salt Cure damage, so it only has one turn left alive. And here I think I made make a bit of a misplay, because Indeedee is probably always going to Trick Room since I've revealed the Earthquake, but I go for the Earthquake anyways, just since they might have wanted to attack with Torkoal in order to get Tatsugiri some damage, because Torkoal can't really beat Tatsugiri. We Earthquake, and Indeedee gets out the Trick Room because I didn't want to KO it, but we bring in Scrafty, and they do Terrafire their Torkoal, and Scrafty is going to protect to waste some Trick Room turns, and they go for the Eruption, and it does about half of Tatsugiri's health, as Tatsugiri is able to land the Draco Meteor, which subdues the Torkoal quite a good bit. Heat Wave misses Scrafty, but I don't think that would have mattered, since Torkoal, it is Terrafire, but it's shown itself to not be Choice Spec now, so if it is Charcoal, then maybe it would have brought Scrafty down. But Tatsugiri gets the burn, and Hyper Voice does some damage to both and is able to pick up KO into Tatsugiri. But we knock off into Torkoal, and then in the back, I don't remember what I had. I think it was Weezing at the time.
Yeah, little lucky that we dodged the heat wave, but it didn't end up mattering too much. Okay, next up we have a pretty interesting spread of Mons here, and they have Ampharos, but I don't think they actually brought the Ampharos. I decided to lead Slaking and Grafii because I wanted to use Grafii a little bit, and there are a lot of abilities that we can copy on this team. However, we can't copy the Armor Tail since we are Prankster with Grafii. However, if we can copy another ability with Grafii first, then we can copy the Armor Tail in order to disable things like Rillaboom going for Fake Out. But that doesn't actually happen, that's just a theoretical. They Fake Out in the Grafii, but we're Covert Cloak, so it doesn't matter, as Slaking now gets its Truant overwritten by the Overcoat, and we double-edged the Zamazenta for a lot of good damage, and they decided to bulk up in front of us, which I'm pretty okay with, because we can always just Encore that later, even though we're no longer Prankster. I predict them to protect with Zamazenta this turn, and down goes their whatever Rillaboom was named. And in comes Weavile, who fakes out into Slaking, and yeah, they just body press into Slaking and get the finisher there. So unfortunately, Grafii is not faster than the Kameo. However, the Kameo can no longer protect because we just encored it into body press, and this allows me to bring in Dondozo and Tatsugiri and just pretty much finish up the late game now that we don't have any Rillaboom in the background to deal massive wood hammer damage into us. We order up into the Kameo in order to get rid of it, and that gives us an attack boost. And the Pokemon in the back is just Pelipper and Dondozo, Tatsugiri. We decide to stall out the rain turns for a little bit here, just in case the Pelipper is going to take all of our time. Because it could be Focus Sash, and getting a Hurricane Confusion would be the worst, but actually Weavile reveals itself to be holding the Sash, so I could have just ordered up into the Pelipper in order to get rid of it. They're still knocking off, and I just decided to get rid of the Weavile, and Pelipper is going to land the last Hurricane and get rid of Dondozo, but Tatsugiri is more than capable of handling the Pelipper at this point. I decided to taunt into Pelipper just in case they were going to go for Tailwind, since we could miss the Draco Meteor, and that shores up the game right there. This team is pretty interesting. They have the opportunity for Mouse Ape, but they also have Meowstic and the Espeon, which kind of reads to me that they want to do Psych-Up shenanigans. But they start Meowstic and Mousehold, and I start Scrafty and Weezing. So Weezing is able to turn off the Meowstic's Prankster. However, Meowstic still has a lot of base speed, so it still gets to set up the gravity before anything else. As we knock off the Meowstic and we Gunk Shot into the Meowstic, that gets rid of it. But now with gravity up, I kind of figure that they want to go for the Population Bomb here. However, since we have them intimidated, and the ideal ability to have would be Technician, that Weezing is currently turning off, we're still in a pretty good spot, all things considered. They go for Population Bomb into Weezing, and we sit here for a very long time. Weezing gets to eat its berry as I coaching into Weezing in order to keep it alive for longer, and Weezing is unfortunately flinched because they reveal themselves to be King's Rock on Mousehold, which is the most annoying way that you can run a Mousehold. But I kind of take a gamble and I protect with Weezing, hoping that we don't get hit, and Scrafty is the one to get hit this time, and we're going to sit here for a while. We get a knockoff into Indeedee though, so we at least get, but the Indeedee revealed itself to be Culberberry, so it got to reduce the power of the Dark-type move. I decided to swap in Dondozo because I'm just a little bored, and they do Encore into Weezing, which means that we can't get the Gunk Shot this turn. However, I decided to withdraw Weezing just to turn abilities back on, and our Dondozo is Terra Steel, so it's more likely to be able to beat Mousehold even with the King's Rock. This time we get to witness 10 population bombs, but they're all not very effective, so they just fill up the entire screen this time. And they flinch the Dozo, which is a little unfortunate, but the Indeedee seems to only have Hyper Voice, or at least nothing better. Mousehold decides to protect this turn, which is great. I decided to Earthquake, and I don't think the Earthquake actually takes Indeedee out, but they decided to do a little bit of chip with Hyper Voice, and we're just gonna keep Earthquake spamming since the Mousehold has revealed itself to be Encore. There's no point in us going for Protect at this time. And the crit does 6%, so we just have to hope that they don't, like, ridiculously crit us, but also hope that the King's Rock doesn't activate that often. I think with landing on the population bombs, it's like a 60% chance to activate the King's Rock with all the population bombs, but we're also outside of gravity now, so yeah, as we saw, they're a lot more likely to miss, which means they're a lot less likely to flinch us. And Espeon KOs itself with the Expanding Force because it's Life Orb. And the opponent quits because I guess they realize that they have officially wasted our time since we got to stall out the gravity. But that was a niche little application of ability shield Scrafty and neutralizing gas wheezing there that I really liked. Up next we have a bit of a fire water grass core. But we also have Rain with Pelipper, and Blood Moon Ursaluna is just generally good. So let's get into it, and they lead Arcanine and Rillaboom, and I did not lead Weezing, so we're going to trade the Intimidates here. They fake out into Scrafty, and I decide to double edge into Rillaboom, and we get the crit into Rillaboom, which is pretty nice. As Scrafty is shown to flinch, and they Will-O-Wisp into Slaking, but that's actually good for us, because now we can take Slaking out, and then we can bring it back in, and we can go for the Facade, so I decided to do that. I brought Tatsugiri this game, just in case I wanted to use Water-type damage with Tatsugiri, since they do have the Rain, but they also have 2 Pokemon that are weak to Water. And Ursaluna decides to use its Terra Normal as Arcanine Extreme Speeds, but is currently intimidated, and we miss the Muddy Water on Arcanine, but we get the crit on Ursaluna, so that's a bit more of a fair trade. As Knockoff comes into Ursaluna and gets rid of its Life Orb, and they just flat out Blood Moon into Tatsugiri in order to get rid of it. As we bring back in Slaking, and Slaking should be faster than everything on the field, and they decide to double Protect for whatever reason, maybe since we can't activate Slaking ability is what they think. But we get the free coaching onto Slaking, and then we bring in Weezing to turn off all abilities. So we get to Facade into the Ursaluna, and that takes it down as they Flare Blitz into Weezing, but Arcanine is still intimidated, so we really don't fear Arcanine at all. As Excalibur is revealed to be their last Pokemon, and we protect Weezing, because we need to keep it alive for as long as possible, while Slaking absolutely obliterates everything that is left. And I believe, yeah, the opponent forfeits, knowing that Slaking at this point absolutely just demolishes Arcanine in one hit. And lastly, this is a battle against a pretty interesting looking Sandting, where they have the Corviknight that can body press in front of us, and they have the Hisuian Decidueye, which can haze in front of us and also get pretty good crits. I lead Grafaiai Slaking into their Decidueye Corviknight, which is pretty good for us because we can't get rid of Corviknight right now, but we can absolutely 100% get rid of Decidueye, who is our main thing that kept Dondozo from going off. And the Corviknight is going to bulk up, but we don't care about that too much right now. The Amoonguss is going to Rage Powder, but I doodled into it so that way Slaking can get an ability that's not Truant this turn, and we double edge into the Amoonguss, and that takes out in one hit, which is nice. As Corviknight is still bulk upping, and they revealed Tyranitar to be in their last slot, but since we stole Regenerator, we can actually use Regenerator with Slaking in order to get some extra health there as we bring in the Dondozo, and we Encore the Corviknight just so it can't cause us any problems on the turn that we're swapping in Dondozo. And Dondozo does take 57% from the knockoff, but now we can bring in Dondozo, Tatsugiri, and they haven't used their Terra yet, but we Wave Crash into Tyranitar, and that does all of Tyranitar's health in one hit. As Corviknight is forced to bulk up until the end of time, and it's actually good that Dondozo is going to get knocked out here because we can do as much Wave Crash damage as we can, and Corviknight does live it, but this allows us to bring Grafaiai back to the field the turn that the Encore ends, and we're Prankster again, which means that we can just Encore the Corviknight until the end of time. And thankfully we did, because we missed the Muddy Water with Tatsugiri, which is a little frustrating. Corviknight is forced to bulk up, but we get to Helping Hand into Tatsugiri, and that is going to end the Corviknight. So yeah, I think Slaking teams are pretty fun. However, I don't think that they're very good inside of open team sheets, which is the format that I really like to play. But in closed team sheets, you can do whatever you want with Slaking. The opponent will never see it coming. Unless, of course, they watch this video, and then they will 100% see it coming. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, maybe consider leaving a like on the video, and even consider subscribing, because both of those things help me out an absolute ton. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you.